Show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Mr. Nurmi, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Arias, the gun you discovered Mr. Alexander owning, was it your understanding that his ownership of said gun was to be kept secret?
Yes.
Now, continuing on the line of questions you were asked as it relates to June 4th, there was a question about you deleting photos from the camera. Do you remember hearing that question?
Yes.
And we heard early in your testimony in this regard that you were a budding professional photographer, correct?
Yes.
And being such, were you familiar with the operation of a digital camera?
Yes.
To your knowledge, how and or where are images on a digital camera saved?
On the memory card?
Okay. Now, in terms of your understanding prior to June 4th, if an image was deleted off a camera, were you of the belief that it simply went away for good?
No, as a digital photographer, my understanding is that...
How she would know this technical aspect.
She's trying to answer the question.
Overall, to me, answer.
As a digital photographer, my understanding is that the image stays on the card, but it's not something that the average person can recover. You can't get it back, but unless you have a lot of money to get it back.
Did you ever have experience to try to, well, no, let me rephrase that. Based on the fact that we saw the camera in the washing machine and it had a memory card in it, you didn't take the camera with you, did you?
Objection, meeting.
Overall, to me, answer.
No, I did not take it with me.
Now, it was a question of you regarding Mr. Alexander shaving. You remember that?
Yes.
And I think you asked specifically about Exhibit 503 and the picture you took of him shaving. Remember seeing that picture a couple days ago?
Yes.
Okay. You had made the commentary that Mr. Alexander shaved the old-fashioned way. When you made that commentary, were you talking about the old hot towel and razor treatment, or were you talking more about just a razor in general?
I guess when I saw the shave cream, it just reminded me of the old-fashioned way. I know that sounds silly because shaving cream is always used, but that's what I meant when I said that.
Okay. You were also asked about the gun coming into your hands that you grabbed from this closet, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And your testimony was that the gun was up in this area somewhere, correct?
In the corner, correct.
Okay. Now, you were asked about whether or not it was in a holster or not. Do you recall that for sure?
On the day of,
Maybe she was asked about the gun and she indicated it was in a holster.
Sustained.
Are you sure that it was in a holster?
on the day of, I don't remember whether it was in the holster or not. When I first discovered it, I don't recall seeing it in a holster, but at one point it was in a holster, yes.
Now, you were asked about some of the cleanup efforts you made. Did you ever, to your recollection, straighten anything up in the closet?
Not to my recollection.
You also mentioned, as it relates to this, or you were also asked, I suspect, as it relates to this incident, this question of cocking the firearm, doing anything to it, and you said you didn't recall doing anything of that nature. Do you recall saying that?
Yes, I really don't remember.
Okay. But you mentioned, I think your word was that you had some familiarity with guns. Do you recall saying that?
Yes.
Could you explain to us what you meant by that?
Yes, I never had any formal training, but Daryl and I used to go camping at Kirk Creek in Big Sur, California, every summer, and he brought his gun, and as a safety precaution, he showed me where the safety was. I think it's called a magazine, where all the bullets are, and how to cock it and that kind of thing. I know there are different kinds of guns, but that's kind of the extent of the familiarity I had, and also the shop owner who sold me my 9mm. Well, I guess we're talking prior June 4th, so that was after. But other than that, I had a general familiarity, but not. I know that guns, each gun type is a little different, so I couldn't tell you too much about it. Just more than much beyond point and shoot kind of thing.
Okay. You were also asked about where various items went on June 4th. The camera being one of them as it relates to this photograph. Does this photograph display for us where the gun was? Is that area covered in the photograph?
The gun? No.
Or excuse me, the camera.
Yes.
Could you point to that, where the camera went?
I was right about, the mat used to be right about here, and I dropped it on the mat and kind of bounced by the tub.
Okay. This object here,
Yes, that one.
is that the mat?
Yes.
Now, for sake of clarification, since we've been talking about mats, was there a separate one for the shower and one for the tub, or is it just one mat?
I don't recall there being a mat for the tub.
So this mat, were you at one point in time then is kneeling on this mat when you're taking the photographs?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you were asked about the knife. The knife, to your recollection, was the knife ever with you in your car?
Not at any point in time, ever, to my knowledge and recollection.
Did you ever have any knowledge or recollection of disposing of this knife at any point in time?
Not disposing of it. The only vague recollection I have is putting a knife in the dishwasher. And again, I'm not sure if I'm confusing that with another time or if it was that day. It's
Okay. You were asked various questions about June 4th as it related to some other incidents that you'd experienced with Mr. Alexander. Do you remember that?
yes. I do.
Related to other violent incidents?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things that came up is your response to these questions in whole was that this was different. He kept coming. Do you remember testifying to that?
Yes.
My question to you as it relates in comparison to these other incidents was the fear that you had on June 4th also different?
Yes, it was different in that it wasn't just fear, it was mortal fear. Like, I thought I was going to die.
And if you can you describe for us why you felt like you were going to die?
It goes back to the choking incident and the fact that when he body slammed me and he was standing over me, again, I thought he was trying to get on top of me, and even when we fell, I felt he still was trying to get on top of me by grabbing at me.
Okay. You were also asked about shaking during the course of this trial. Do you recall being asked about that? I think that was this morning. You were asked about that.
Yes.
And you said that you were shaking during your cross-examination, I believe you said the first day, correct?
Yeah, I think I was shaking all the days, but most prominently on the first day of cross.
Okay. Now, when you say shaking, what part of you was shaking?
My whole body trembles. Like, for example, when I wasn't talking, I had my jaw muscles hurt because I had my teeth clenched because my teeth would have been chattering, so I was shaking that much. And sometimes I'll sit on my hands because I feel like they're shaking. And there were a few times when I wanted to reach for the water, but I knew that it would be visible, and it's kind of embarrassing. I didn't want the state to know that he was affecting me that way, and so I just waited until I felt like I could reach for the water without it making it obvious.
So you attempted to hide the shaking from everyone in the courtroom?
Yeah, I tense my whole body so that I'm not shaking. I try to have a physical control over it, although sometimes it's difficult.
This sensation of tensing your body so you didn't shake, did you ever do that when Mr. Alexander was being physically violent with you?
I don't recall attempting to stop it the way I try to now, but I don't know.
Okay. One issue that came up in a few of the questions a little bit yesterday and this morning was the issue of shame. Do you recall discussing that?
Yes.
And I think you were asked something to the effect that, well, if you had killed in self-defense, then maybe this is what you had done wrong. But there were some questions about shame as well in this regard. So I want to make sure we're clear. What are you ashamed of as it relates to June 4th, 2008?
I'm ashamed that I did what I did. I'm ashamed that I'm the person that did that. I was ashamed beyond that. I was ashamed of some of the things that Travis and I did. But more than shame, I was very horrified with myself, and I just never in my life imagined that I would be pushed to that point, or capable of being pushed to that point, or that would be something that I would do, because I was a person who loved all life, and this is kind of the extreme opposite. It would appear that way. I didn't feel that way, but it looks that way, and I was very ashamed of it.
You were also asked, well, let me preface this by saying that, you've admitted throughout the course of your testimony these past few weeks, you've admitted that you lied about being there to Detective Flores, to the world, in essence, to some degree, right?
Yes.
And then when confronted with evidence, you lied about your presence there. You lied to Detective Flores and ultimately on national TV by saying that two intruders came in the home and had caused Mr. Alexander's death. Right? You recall doing that and admitting to lying about that?
Yes.
And you perpetrated that lie, as we've heard throughout this trial, for a long time. Isn't that correct?
Throughout the trial, no, but throughout the case.
No, throughout the case.
Yes.
Given all these lies, you were asked an important question. Why should anyone believe you now? Remember being asked that?
Yes.
So, Jodi, that is the ultimate question. Why should anybody believe you now?
Like I said before, I lied a lot in the beginning, and each of those lies tied back directly to two things. Travis and protecting his his reputation, and my own partially, and two, related to any involvement in his death. So I understand that there will always be questions, but all I can do at this point is say what happened to the best of my recollection. And if I'm convicted, then that's because of my own bad choices in the beginning.
Scope and relevance and basic promise of the jury.
Sustained.
No further questions.
Martinez, you may follow up.
Ma'am, one of the things that you told us was that you're going to tell the truth, the whole truth, throughout this proceeding. Do you remember that when you took the oath?
Yes, to the best of my recollection.
Am I asking you to the best of your recollection that you took the oath, ma'am?
Objection, argumentative, Judge.
Sustained.
Ma'am, do you remember standing in front of the clerk to Judge Stevens' left and being sworn in? Do you remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember being asked, will you tell the truth, the whole truth? Do you remember being told that?
Yes.
And you swore that you would, right?
Yes.
One of the questions that was brought up during the questioning by the jury and also by your defense attorney involved your allegation involving Mr. Alexander's, or your claim of Mr. Alexander's alleged pedophilia. Do you remember that?
That's correct.
And this is a claim that you have alleged that it involved January 21st of 2008, right?
Yes.
And you were asked by one of the jurors, well, ma'am, did you tell anybody else about this alleged claim of pedophilia? And you said, well, yeah. Do you remember saying that you did?
Yes.
And do you remember that you kind of at that point hesitated and you turned to the jury and you said, yes, I did tell a psychologist, right?
Yes.
And you also indicated that you may have told somebody else, right?
Yes.
And with regard to these somebody else's, who are they?
Matt McCartney.
All right. And Matt McCartney is this individual that is your friend, right?
He is a friend of mine, yes.
He's a person who will not betray you, correct?
My confidence, yes.
And he's somebody who, well, in the 48 hours interview, that's how you described it. Someone who will not betray you, correct?
Right, when I confide in him.
Yes or no?
Yes.
In the 48 hours interview that we saw, isn't it true that you said that he's an individual that will not betray you?
That's correct.
Additionally, didn't it also indicate that he's an ally? You indicated that he was an ally of yours, right?
Yes.
And this individual, Matt McCartney, is somebody who will also lie for you, won't he?
No, he would never do that.
Overruled.
He would never do that.
Are you aware of the statements that he made in January of 2008, I'm sorry, in January of 2013 involving that very fact? Yes or no?
Objection, Your Honor. Beyond the scope of the questions. Your approach.
You may. You may proceed.
And Matthew McCartney is this individual who is your ally, right?
Was.
Ask and answer.
Sustained.
Now, you said that you would tell us the whole truth, right? Do you remember that you would say involving this pedophilia thing? Do you remember telling us
Yes.
that? Well, you did tell us that you spoke to, initially you said, well, I did tell a therapist. Do you remember telling us that, right?
Say what?
Initially, you testified that you told a therapist, correct?
He was not a therapist.
Yeah. Okay. A psychologist. How about that?
Yes.
Even though this
Can we approach?
You may. Overruled.
And that you did make this statement to this psychologist. You told us about that earlier, right?
Yes.
Well, this is one of the psychologists is Richard Samuels that you told, right?
That was not the psychologist.
Ma'am, I didn't ask you if that was one of the psychologists, did I?
That's how I interpret it, so I guess
I'm not asking you to interpret anything. If you don't understand the question, ask me, and we will repeat it for you. The question was, ma'am, do you understand that?
Yes.
With regard to this issue, isn't it true that one of the people that you told about this was Richard Samuels, correct?
Yes.
And this individual, Richard Samuels, is someone who is assisting in your defense, correct?
Yes.
And you also told Alice Laviolette, right?
Yes.
And these individuals, Alice Laviolette, for example, she's also going to testify on your behalf, correct?
That's my understanding.
Do you have any reason to believe that she's not going to testify on your behalf?
Objection calls for speculation.
No.
She's interviewed you, right?
Yes.
And you've talked to her about this alleged pedophilia, correct?
That's correct.
And you told her what it was that you knew about the pedophilia, right?
I don't remember how in depth we discussed it, but I did tell her some
You
things
did?
about it. Yes.
It's fair to say, for example, the statements that you made to Richard Samuels were made years after this case began to be prosecuted, correct?
Possibly, yes. I don't remember the exact time frame.
Well, it was in 2011 that you talked to him about it, wasn't it?
No, it was 2010 early.
Oh, so
I
you
believe.
do remember that it was in 2010. So that was years after this case began to be prosecuted, right?
I believe it was, yes.
Well, you just told me 2010. Are you going to go back on that, or are you going to stay with that answer? Which one do you want?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
I think I'm trying to remember when I told him, but we began to meet, I think, within a year after. I'm not sure.
So you speak to this individual. Isn't it to your benefit to start saying these kinds of things?
Objection, argumentative.
I don't think so. I think it's mortifying.
Oh, so you think that it's to your detriment, then, to come in here to court and talk about Mr. Alexander masturbating to a picture of a young person, a young boy. You think that that's to your detriment?
I don't know if it's to my benefit or detriment. I just know it's the truth.
I'm not asking you if it's the truth, am I?
No.
I'm asking you whether isn't that to your benefit?
I don't know if it's to my benefit or my detriment.
Why bring it up then if it isn't going to be of any use to you?
I swore to tell everything that I
Pardon?
remember.
I didn't hear you.
Are you talking about here or with Richard Samuels?
I'm talking about right here. Why bring it up if it's not going to help you?
Because it was asked.
Oh, I see. Now, so you are saying now that if it were up to you, you wouldn't have brought that up.
Objection beyond the scope of the questions.
Overruled.
I don't know.
So you didn't, even later after that, you spoke to Alice Laviolette about it, right?
After Samuels?
Sure.
It was after I first met Samuels, but I think their visits have been somewhat contemporaneous.
So you think that you met Alice Laviolette at the same time that you met Mr. Samuels? Is that correct?
No, I said it.
Characterizes her testimony.
Sustained.
You did tell Alice Laviolette about this, right?
Correct.
And this was even years beyond the time that you talked to Mr. Samuels, correct?
I don't know. It was after, but I don't know about years.
And again, it was to your benefit because you're saying that you're a victim of domestic violence to bring this up, right?
I'm not saying it's to my benefit or detriment. It was asked of me.
And you just went along and you did what you were told. Is that what you're saying?
Objection, argumentative. Calls for speculation.
I just answered questions.
And so you're telling me that, yes, you did what you were told, kind of like with the interview with First Edition or whatever it was. Inside Edition.
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
So you're saying that just to be clear, are you saying that you would or would not have brought it up?
It really depends on the time frame because I didn't want to ever bring it up. And then...
Well, ma'am, we're talking about right now.
Oh, I couldn't say, honestly. I really couldn't say.
You couldn't say.
No.
It's not a memory issue. You just can't say, right?
It's not really a preference or not a preference that I've explored or thought about in my mind. I'm just answering questions.
But immediately after it happened in January of 2008, you didn't tell anybody, right?
Definitely not.
And you were arrested on July 15th of 2008, and you didn't tell the detective, right?
No.
You had another conversation with the detective on July 16th of 2008, and you didn't tell him anything either, right, about this thing, right?
That's correct.
Whatever happened after that, you then say that you told somebody else, right? You then stated, as part of a question from the jury, that you did tell somebody else, right?
Yes, but not in that order.
I understand that. You remember the jury asking you a question about it, and you kind of looked over at them and you said, yes, I did tell somebody else. Do you remember telling them that?
Yes.
When was this that you told somebody else?
April 2008.
What was that again?
April 2008.
And who was it that you told in April of 2008 about this?
Matt McCartney.
So again, it's Mr. McCartney that you told, besides Mr. McCartney.
Oh, the doctor?
No. We were talking, let's do it this way. Do you remember we were talking about July 15th of 2008 and your arrest?
Do you mean July 21st?
You think you were arrested on July 21st of
I'm sorry, I was thinking you said January. July
Ma'am.
15th, yes.
Let's go back to the date of your arrest. You were arrested on July 15th of 2008, weren't you?
Yes.
And you had a conversation with the detective on that date, right?
Yes.
You were also had another conversation with the detective on July 16th of 2008, right?
Yes.
And you didn't tell him anything about this, right?
That's correct.
You did say, though, when you were asked a question by the jurors about this, that after that, you did tell a psychologist about it. Do you remember answering that question to the jurors?
Yes.
When did you tell the psychologist about this issue involving the pedophilia?
I think it was July 2009, I believe.
And
I'm not sure of the month, but it was 2009.
you think it was July 2009?
I'm not
And what's
entirely
name
sure
of
of
the
the
person
month.
that you told to this to?
You may. You may proceed.
So what was the date that you told this other individual for the first time about these allegations of pedophilia against Mr. Alexander?
It wasn't the first time that I told somebody, but the individual you're referring to it was somewhere in 2009. I don't remember the exact month.
It's difficult for you to know which individual I'm referring to. Wouldn't you agree, ma'am?
I know which guy, I just can't remember his name. He's a doctor out of San Diego.
Okay. But the person before that you told, according to you, is Matthew McCartney, right?
That's correct.
One of the things that we know, ma'am, is that you told us that, well, when you decided to take this trip, that you contacted Mr. Brewer because you wanted to get some gas cans for him, right?
Yes.
It's been established that there were 2 gas cans each with the capacity of 5 gallons or a little bit over, right?
That's my understanding.
Well, you were there, right?
Yes.
And you filled them up in Pasadena, didn't you?
It mischaracterizes her testimony.
I'm sorry. 3 people talking at once. What is your objection?
Objection, it mischaracterizes her testimony. She never said 5 gallons or more.
Overruled. You may proceed.
Okay. You were the one that filled these cans up with gasoline in Pasadena, according to you, right?
I put gas in them. I don't know that I filled them to the brim because I was worried about their flammability.
You were the one, though, that put the gasoline into these 2 gas cans, correct?
Correct.
And you were the one that paid for them, right?
Yes.
And ma'am, you were the one that also put gas in your car, right?
Yes.
In response to a question from the jury, this issue was brought up as to what happened first, or whether or not there were 3 cans. Do you remember 3 gas cans? Do you remember that line of questioning?
Not the sequence, but the matter of 3 gas cans.
Do you remember that this issue was brought up about whether or not you filled up your car up with gas first, or put the gas into the gas cans first? Do you remember even testifying about that this morning?
I remember testifying about that.
Hold on, this morning. Do you remember testifying about that?
Yes.
And you indicated that, well, previously to that you didn't know which one had happened first, whether or not you'd put the gas into the car first, or whether you'd put the gas into the cans first. Do you remember saying that you didn't know that, right?
Are you talking about on cross?
I'm talking about throughout these whole proceedings, ma'am.
I remember on cross. I couldn't remember because the way you were questioning me.
Well, ma'am, I'm not asking you about whether or not you remember anything on cross. I'm asking you whether or not previous to that, you told us that you couldn't remember if you put the gasoline into the car first or into the cans first.
Yes, I do remember that.
Okay? But yet, when the jurors asked you the question, do you remember that you said, oh, I put the gas into the car first, and then I must have tripped or turned off the meter, if you will, and that's why there's these separate transactions. Do you remember telling us that?
That was my only logic and understanding. And
Well,
I
I'm
remember
not
saying
asking you about your logic and understanding. Isn't that what you told the jury just previously today?
I did say that, but not in response to the question you're referring to.
Ma'am, whether it's in response to the question I'm posing to you or not, isn't it true that that's what you told people, the jurors here?
Yes.
So my question to you then, ma'am, is, isn't it true then that you do remember the sequence of events involving the filling up the car with gas in Pasadena?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony as to what she was filling up.
Overruled.
The only part I remember, as far as sequence, is I put the gas in the gas cans, and then so I didn't leave the hose laying on the floor or the ground or the concrete, I hung it up. That ends the transaction. That's all I know.
So you're saying, now you're back to the issue of telling us that you don't remember whether or not you put gas in the car first or in the gas cans first, right? That's what you're saying.
I really don't know the exact sequence. I wouldn't bet all my money on what it was. I can only go by receipts and times to help me remember, but that's it.
So that's what you're saying, though, but you don't remember now. That's what you're telling us, right?
From memory, no.
That's what I'm asking you from. What is your memory of that event, right? Right? That's what I'm asking you, right?
Okay.
And with regard to that time, nobody was yelling at you at that time, right?
That's correct.
Nobody was grilling you, right?
That's correct.
You've been fond of telling us how great of a memory you have if no one is yelling at you, right?
Yes.
But that's something that you just don't remember, though, right?
Not in great detail. That's right.
But you did tell us that you do have a very good memory for detail previously, though, right?
Usually, yes.
Ma'am, the other thing that you told us with regard to these gas cans is that you purchased one in Salinas, California, right?
Yes.
5-gallon gas can, right?
Yes.
And you purchased this gas can in Salinas, and you said after a short period of time, well, you didn't say a period of time, but you said that you returned it back to the store in the Walmart in Salinas, right?
That's correct.
And it's the same store that you brought it from, right?
Yes.
Because it was probably because it was in the same general vicinity, right?
Right.
And ma'am, one of the other things that you said was that the reason that you did this was because it was expensive and it didn't seem to make sense to you to get that gas can, right?
Yeah, in hindsight, I realized it did make sense.
All right. So why is it then, ma'am, that you showed up with 3 gas cans in Salt Lake City?
Objection is characteristic of testimony.
Overruled.
Not so with the questions as well.
Approach, please.
Counsel. Proceed.
So why is it you had 3 gas cans in Salt Lake City, ma'am?
I don't even recall going to Salt Lake City. I went to West Jordan. And I
So
went to...
well, hold on. First, let's break that down. You're saying you don't ever even remember going to Salt Lake City, ever, on June 6th of 2008.
I don't recall where the city limits end and begin. But to answer the gas can question, I went to Mesa with 2 gas cans.
Well, you did go to Salt Lake City, right?
I was in the vicinity. I went to Sandy, I think, and West Jordan.
You did visit an individual by the name of Brian Burns, right?
That's correct.
And during that time, before you left Salt Lake City, you left Salt Lake City area in the very early morning hours, right?
Yes,
You filled up with gas, right?
I think I did. I don't know.
Well, let's look. Let's start looking at this. And in fact, ma'am, we'll take a look at Exhibit 237.017. You see SLC?
Yes.
You don't have any doubt that that stands for Salt Lake City, Utah, does it?
No, I don't doubt that.
And that's Tesoro, right? That's
Yes.
a gas station, right?
Yes.
And you put some gasoline there, right?
Yes.
If we look down here, it does have your name on there, right?
Yes.
Then if we look at Exhibit 237.016, there's Salt Lake City, right?
Yes.
And does you see your name right there?
Yes.
So you were in Salt Lake City, first of all, to establish that, right?
Okay, yes.
And you were there in the early morning hours, right?
I left Ryan's house in the early morning hours, so.
Well, that's so we can just make sure that we have the time, 237.016. See the time there?
Yes.
What time does it indicate that you were putting gas in the car, right?
Yes, 3:57.
Right? And it does tell us here that you went to pump number 2, right?
Yes.
Put in 10.672 gallons, right?
Yes.
And the price for each one was $3.85 per gallon, right?
Yes.
And it was $41.18, right?
Yes.
Then at exhibit 237.017, same gas station. You see that?
Yes.
You see the date and the approval time?
Yes.
It's 4:05 in the morning, correct?
Correct.
And on this one, it's $36.98, right?
Yes.
And it talks about that you're at pump 2 again, and it's 9.583 gallons, right?
That's correct.
You actually put in more gas, though, didn't you?
I don't know.
Well, then let's take a look at, you had a bank account with Washington Mutual, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And in fact, we have some receipts here that talk about you having an account with Washington Mutual. And in fact, you had 2 of them, right?
Yes, a business and a personal.
237.005. You see that?
Yes.
There's an account, there's a deposit, that's your account, right?
I'm going to object this beyond the scope of the questions.
Overruled.
Right?
That's my account.
And then you also had another account, 237.006, and we've talked about this exhibit, right, before.
Yeah, I think so.
Washington Mutual account, right?
Yes.
And there are records that Washington Mutual keeps, don't they?
Yes.
You aware of that?
Yes.
And there are statements that they send out to you, don't they?
I think I got them online, usually.
But there are statements that are prepared, whether they are
Yes.
online or they're sent out, right?
That's correct.
Go ahead and take a look at an exhibit. Take a look at exhibit number 523, and after you've looked at it, see if that refreshes your, or whether or not you recognize that as your statement from Washington Mutual.
Yes, it does look like that.
And what's the time period, ma'am? Should say on the upper right-hand corner.
It says June 1st through June 30th.
All right. I may have it back. Move for the admission of exhibit 523.
We're going to object, Your Honor. May we approach?
You may. 523 is admitted.
Take a look at Exhibit 523. That's your parents' home, correct?
No, that's my grandparents' home.
That's your grandparents' home, and that's where you were living, right?
Yes.
On page 2, there are 3 transactions that I want to focus into Tesoro. And Tesoro is the, on 237.016, that's the merchant. You see that?
Yes.
237.017, that's also Tesoro. Do you see that?
237, what did you say? Where?
Tesoro. Do you see that at the very top?
Oh, yeah, yes. I'm sorry.
Okay? And so when we're talking about this exhibit, do you see 3 transactions to Tesoro in Salt Lake City, Utah, correct?
Yes, I do.
You were in Salt Lake City, Utah on June 6th of 2008, weren't you?
Yes.
You just told me that you were leaving there in the morning, that area, to come back to Wairika, right?
That's correct.
You told us previously that you were going to come back so that you could go back to work, right?
Yes. And
And if you take a look at this purchase here from Tesoro, you see the amount there?
yes.
How much is that, ma'am?
$36.98.
Okay. Let's take a look at exhibit number 237.017. How much is the amount?
$36.98.
It's the same station, it's same amount, correct?
Correct.
That's the same purchase, right?
Yes.
And exhibit number 237.016, it's for how much, ma'am?
$41.18.
And if we go down here, do you see that right there?
Yes.
How much is that?
$41.18.
That's the same amount, right?
Correct.
And then you do have, though, a third transaction there. Do you see that?
Yes.
1965, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, if we go back to exhibit number 237.017, how much was the price per gallon that you bought that day?
It looks like $3.85.
And 9/10, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, if you take this amount per gallon, 3.859, $3.859 per gallon, and you divide it into this amount of 1965, do you know how much, what that division would indicate?
No.
Would it surprise you that it would indicate that it's 5.09? Would that surprise you?
No.
So, you make 3 purchases here, don't you?
Yes.
You also, there are 2 purchases for sure that we know that are for gas, right?
That's correct.
The other one is for 1965, right?
Yes.
If we do the mathematics, that equals 5 gallons of gas. If you were putting gas,
Objection argumentative is that there's no testimony that it was gas purchased.
Overruled.
What was your question?
the question is a mathematical one, ma'am. Isn't it true that if you divide 1965 by 3.859, that you would get 5.09?
If the math is correct, then yes.
And you did indicate to us that you did buy a third can in Salinas, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you bought that in Salinas, and it was a 5-gallon gas can, right?
That's correct.
Ma'am, would it surprise you that the Walmart in Salinas does not have any record of any refund back on June 2nd when you claim you bought this, or June 3rd when you claim you bought this, of a
Argumentative
refund?
beyond the scope.
Approach, please.
may continue.
Ma'am. Exhibit number 237.008, Walmart receipt. You see this, correct?
Yes,
This is the Walmart that you went to in Salinas and you purchased a 5-gallon gas can, right? You told us that before, right?
yes, I did.
And you were there on June 3rd of 2008 at 3:22 in the afternoon when you made that purchase, right?
That's correct.
Would it surprise you to find that on that, and you said that you got a refund in cash, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Would it surprise you that Walmart does not have any record of any refund for a gas can on that date of June 3rd of 2008?
Considering that I returned it, that would surprise me.
Pardon?
Considering that I returned it, that would surprise me.
It would surprise you
Yes,
because you claim you returned it on that day, right?
yes, I did, and I received cash for it.
Pardon?
And I received
And
cash
you
back
received
for it.
cash. Okay. You also told us that you received an injury to your right finger at Casa Ramos. Do you remember that?
Objection, counsel. Questions?
Approach, please.
You may continue.
Do you remember in response to a question from the jurors that you said that you damaged your right finger during a glass-breaking incident at Casa Ramos? Do you remember telling us that?
It was not glass breaking. I jammed it on a metal ledge.
All right.
At
So
Casa
at
Ramos.
Casa Ramos, you injured your finger, right?
Yes,
And do you remember that you told us, well, no paperwork was filled out, right?
that's correct.
And you told us that no paperwork was filled out was because this was a really small business, right?
I said it was did I say small business? It's private business, yeah.
Well, no, most businesses are private. Are you saying now that you meant to say it was a private business? Is that what you're saying?
No, it was a small business. There were only like maybe 4 or 5 restaurants.
So you think that 4 or 5 restaurants are a small business, right?
Usually I work for chains that have thousands of restaurants, so that's a very small business, yes.
So to you, this is a small business because you believe that there are only 4 locations, right?
There may have even been less then. I don't know. I think there were very few in the Northern California area.
And just because they're a small business, they do not have to comply with reporting accidents on the job, is what you're telling us, right?
Objection calls for speculation. Relevancy.
Sustained to that question.
Ma'am, actually, don't they actually have, back then, didn't they actually have 13 restaurants?
Objection calls for speculation. Ask and answer.
Overruled.
Not that particular franchise. They only had a few. I know that my understanding is that it's a family of 2 brothers or cousins. They're related somehow, and that they own a chain of a different type of restaurant in Oregon. And then the restaurants I worked for, there was just a few of them.
So you're saying that there may be 2 restaurants then that are called Casa Ramos, right?
No, not 2. There were more than 2, but there weren't very many.
No, what you're saying is that you're drawing now a distinction between the ownership of the Casa Ramos restaurants, one being owned by one member of the family and one being owned by another member of the family, right?
Objection, relevance, argument, way beyond the scope of any of the questions.
Overruled.
The other restaurants are called Azteca, so yeah, they're completely different.
All right, so when we talk about Casa Ramos, we're actually just talking about on the marquee Casa Ramos, and your belief is there's only approximately 4 of those, right?
I only knew of 4 or 5.
And because of their size, you told us, in response to a jury question, that even though you suffered this injury, well, you did tell the manager about the injury, didn't you?
I had to get a Band-Aid, yes.
Well, you did tell the manager about the injury. Didn't you tell us that?
Yes,
And you did take a picture of that injury, right?
yes,
And we've seen that picture of that injury, right?
yes,
And you're saying that because of the type of business that it was, no claim had to be filed pursuant to the laws of the state of California, right?
That's not what I'm saying. I said that that was my speculation as to why nothing was ever filled out.
You didn't fill anything out, right?
No, I didn't.
The manager didn't fill anything out, even though you told him about it, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
You did talk to the manager about it, correct?
Not in great depth. I asked him for a
I'm not
Band-Aid.
asking you in great depth. Yes or no, did you talk to the manager?
I asked him for a Band-Aid.
So are you now saying that you didn't tell the manager that you hurt yourself on the job? Is that what you're now telling us?
I'm not sure what was said. I just know I needed a Band-Aid quick because it was busy and I was about to bleed a lot.
So it appears from what you're telling us now is that you never indicated to him that you were injured on the job then, as you previously told us.
Well, asking for a Band-Aid is an indication that I'm injured.
Pardon?
Asking for a Band-Aid to me is an indication that I'm injured.
No, but what I'm saying is specifically, previously on your examination, you indicated that you did talk to the manager about your injury. Do you remember telling us that?
Yes.
And during that conversation, you said that he knew that you had injured yourself at work. Do you remember telling us that?
I don't know what he knew. I just know that he knew I asked him for a Band-Aid.
So now you never told him about you being injured on the job. You just asked for a Band-Aid then, right?
Yes, and I was holding my hand, putting pressure on it.
And you were holding your hand, putting pressure on it, and you're saying he didn't ask you anything about how you injured your hand at all, right?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
I only remember that we were very busy in the middle of the rush and we didn't have time to sit and discuss my hand.
I'm not asking you if you were busy. I'm asking you whether or isn't it true that he did not ask you, according to your statement, anything about how you'd suffered that injury?
That according to my statement, what you're saying is not true, or it might be true, but I don't remember what was discussed regarding the injury. All I know is I hurt my hand, the skin folded back, I flipped it over, put pressure on it, and said I went and found my manager, said I need a Band-Aid right away. There were tons of tickets coming through, I had a bazillion margaritas to make, and it was busy, and I needed a Band-Aid. That's all I know.
So you did not cut yourself on a margarita glass, though, right?
No, I didn't cut myself on glass. It was a jam from
Right.
metal.
No, previously, do you remember telling us in response to a jury question that you had cut yourself on a margarita glass?
Objection characterizes her testimony.
Overruled. You may answer.
I didn't say margarita glass in reference to Casa Ramos. I cut my hand on a glass at Travis's house.
I'm talking about Casa Ramos. I'm not talking about Mr. Alexander's house. I'm talking about Casa Ramos. You're saying that you injured your finger, your right ring finger, on something other than glass, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't tell the manager about the way this occurred, even though it occurred while on the job, right?
I don't recall if it was discussed in detail or not.
And you're the same person that previously testified today that you have a very good memory for details, right?
Yes.
Except for there. You don't remember that one, right?
I didn't say it was perfect. I said it was good.
No, I'm not saying that you said it was perfect. You yourself admitted that you had a good memory for details, right?
Objection, argumentative, ask and answer.
Overruled.
I don't even know that I used details. I just said I think I have a good memory.
Judge, I'm done with this area.
All right. Ladies and
Gentlemen, no court tomorrow, Friday, no court Monday or Tuesday, the 11th and 12th. So we'll see you back here on the 13th at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. on the 13th. Between now and then, remember the admonition. Are there any questions? We'll see you next Wednesday. You are excused.
Please stand for adjourned.
Arias, you may step down.
Thank you.
Counsel, anything else? No. We are at recess.